Okay. How's everybody? Good afternoon, greetings, hotep, peace, all those things. Good to see you all this afternoon. Thanks for coming out. I'm really excited to really be able to see so many of you, to hear about, to me, one of the most important topics, and that is classical African pyramid builders. These are builders who built one of the most astounding civilization complex that the world has ever seen. And I really want to thank Gada for that introduction. I owe her a little bit. We kind of rehearsed it, and we had to negotiate a fee, so thank you for that. And she wasn't too expensive. And I want to thank my colleague, Professor Hodge, for being a solid colleague, and so many that really volunteered their time today and before this event. So our Save Nubia Project, you have a pretty good idea that we're looking to save the physical remains of ancient Kush and Nubia, two of the greatest civilizations in the history of humanity, that are now threatened to be flooded and obliterated by a series of dams. So what I'm going to share with you today is the classical African pyramid builders in Sudan and Egypt. Let's put this on full, and really explore some of the myths of pyramid buildings, because these are actually the monuments that confound time. And there's an Arab proverb that all the world fears time, but time itself fears the pyramids. And so that's what we're going to share with you today, because people have ideas about pyramids, but not until they go out in the desert do they understand the magnitude of these great monuments. So I think, so that's our topic today, and so we're all set. Okay, so obviously we're talking about Africa. It's almost 12 million square miles, and today we're looking at the northeast corridor. This is an area where there's a vast civilization complex where they built pyramids from the south to the north, and it's one of the richest archaeological regions on record. There's many different sites that have been excavated, but many more that have not been excavated. So we're just scratching the surface. So the further we go back, we see that these civilizations are ready-made. They're at a very, very high level. And I've been doing work out in the field now for 2 decades. So I go to pyramid sites, temple sites, tomb sites, and ancient residential sites to do original first-hand research. It's okay to read what others had to say and study their works. That's a part of scholarship. But for me, it's going beyond that to do original work and investigation out in the field. So I want to share with you just a small part of what I've been doing over the last couple of decades. And so one of the things about building pyramids is that this is not something that just came up, that somebody had a wonderful idea one day, but really it's nature itself that taught the pyramid builders how to build monuments that defy time. And if you take a look at this map, it really indicates deserts in the world. And if we look at the field of geology, it looks at the formation of rocks. Most of the field of geology, it originated largely in Europe, and you see that there's no deserts in that area. So most of us have a faulty understanding, we really do, about the desert. Some people think the desert is so-called man-made. It's not. It's part of the ebb and flow of nature. And I worked on a NASA-sponsored project some years ago, and we looked at the ancient climate going back several hundred thousands of years, and we know that the desert is a natural formation that really has nothing to do with somebody overworking the land as we've been taught. But anyway, this area here is really understudied. So the first thing we want to look at today is the origin of the pyramid form. Where did this come from? When I was a graduate student at Morgan State University, I had the pleasure of learning in this NASA-sponsored project from one of the great geologists, Farouk El-Baz, who did a special study to look at the origin of this pyramid form. So one of the things we want to share about this development in the desert environment is that we can go back over a 300,000-year period and look at the flow of wet and dry periods. So we can really reconstruct the period. I know the writing might be a little bit small for some of you, but it's important to know that the conical shape, the triangular shape that we call a pyramid, it naturally occurs in nature. And you see it in the Nile Valley, in that corridor that I showed you, in current-day Sudan, current-day Egypt. There are hundreds of naturally formed structures that we call pyramids. So we want to show you that. And so the rocks are formed by wind and sand. So the original idea, you'll see it comes from nature itself. So that's what we want to explore today, that these are natural formations that we know as pyramids. For example, these structures here, yes, they're triangular in shape, they're pyramidal in shape, but they are formed by nature. These are natural land formations, and you see them by the dozens as you go out in the field. So when you're driving, then you're just snapping pictures of these natural formations like these that you see here. My camera was acting a little bit funny here, but so it had doing its own thing. But at the Aswan airport, you can see that these are natural pyramid shapes, and engineers have done studies to determine that these are not objects made by men and women, but they're made by nature. This as well is natural land formation. So this is where they got the original idea to build pyramids. Does anybody notice anything here? It's a lot of haze when I took the picture, but do you notice any forms, any shapes by chance? Over where? Exactly. So this is a towering natural land formation. But it's stunning because when you actually see pyramids, and when you see something like this, you would think that it's one of those great monuments that loom in majesty in the desert. But this is a natural land formation. These natural land formations. I took this from the bus. But then you also have many different pyramids. There's over 111 or so, 112 pyramids or so in Egypt, and you see them everywhere. The Abu Sir pyramids. These are very large structures. Most people are aware only of the ones in Giza, the Great Pyramids, but there's many of them, like these large ones. Now, if you take a look at the structure on the top and the structure on the bottom, my question to you is which one is a natural land formation and which one was made by pyramid builders? What's your opinion? Okay, we got different opinions. So you can be 50% right or wrong, but you got a 50% chance. So let's see your eyesight. So natural land formation on the top, and this is the pyramid of King Sahure of the 5th dynasty. The 5th dynasty, this would have been about 2400 BCE, or 2400 before the Common Era, and this is during the Pyramid Age. So sometimes, by the way, the greatest and the most astounding of the pyramids, they really are built in the 3rd dynasty and 4th dynasty. There seems to be a decline in craftsmanship and architectural greatness as time goes on, but you can tell that it's very difficult to see this over time. This is the top of the mountain in the Valley of the Kings. And you can see that it looks like kind of a pyramidal shape. And this, believe it or not, is a pyramid in the latter part of the Pyramid Age. And this is the pyramid of King Teti. And Teti's pyramid, as you can see, is in ruins, but this is how you find some of them, not all, but some. That's why it's hard to tell what's a natural landform and what's actual pyramids, because as I said, there's many of them, over 100 in Egypt. But I want to introduce you to yardangs, if you're not familiar with it, because a yardang has tremendous influence on the shape of monuments. So what is a yardang? It is a shape that's sculpted by wind. So wind predominates over water. So the wind, it shapes and molds structures. So that yardangs, and by the way, the word Egypt, the real name of the country is Kemet. That's what they called it. So we say Comitian rather than Egypt, because that comes along thousands of years later when the Greeks came around and they could not speak or read or write African languages, so everything changed, all of the names. So I tend to use the original names so that we can be as accurate as possible. But nevertheless, it's wind erosion that shapes a lot of the monuments, and so they're yardangs. That's what they are actually called, and they look like monuments. But that's what happens in an arid environment. It's wind, it's sand that over time, over geological time, shapes structures. So this is important. So this here, for example, this is the greatest statue on earth. This is the most well-known and the most famous statue in the history of the world. The Greeks called it the Sphinx, but the real name is Haru Im Akhet. You say, well, wow, how do I even pronounce that? Well, let's make it a little bit easier for you. You can break it up into syllables. It's Haru Im Akhet, or the god Haru in the horizon. And this faces east. You can see that this is the monument, this great monument, 66 feet high, 240 feet long, made out of one single block of limestone, going back thousands of years in time.